Sure.
After all.
All right, guys, quiet down. Today we're going to be talking about theses. So does anyone know what a thesis statement is? Trent.
A thesis is an argument.
That's right. A thesis statement provides the argument for the rest of your essay. It's the answer to a question, either implicit or explicit. I want you to think of a thesis statement as you would giving directions to a stranger on a map. You want them to follow the directions to a point, but you don't want your directions to be too broad or too vague, or they're going to get lost along the way. However, if your directions are clear and concise, then they should be able to get from point A to point B exactly as you planned it for them. So now, can anyone think of a broad thesis statement for me? Sam?
Bow tie pasta is the best pasta.
See, that's a good example. It's argumentative as a thesis should be, but it's too broad. You just can't quite shape a paper around something that big. Now I want you guys to take 10 to 15 seconds, think amongst yourselves of a narrow thesis topic about pasta. All right. Does anyone have one they want to share with the rest of the class? Megan.
Spaghetti is the best pasta because you can twirl it with a fork.
That's really good. See, you know exactly what she's going to argue from that thesis statement. Does anyone else have one? Nick.
I think spaghetti is the best because it can be slurped up.
That's also really good, but there's one thing I want you to change just a little bit. I don't want you to say, I think that in your theses. I want you to use impersonal construction. So just don't use I when you write your theses. So now, we're going to go to the board, and I wrote a thesis to present to you guys that we can examine. So, steak is better than salad because it has more protein and it comes from animals. Now, can anyone tell me from looking at this thesis what my two body paragraphs are going to be? JD.
The first one will be that it has protein, and the second one will be that it comes from animals.
That's correct. Now, if you look at this statement, it has three parts. There's the first part, steak is better than salad. That's the argument. The second part, because it has protein, that's the first body paragraph. And then the second part, or the third part, it comes from animals. That's going to be the third body paragraph. In this thesis, you see exactly where my paper is going to go and what I'm going to argue. Now, I have a question for you guys. What does this thesis statement answer? What kind of question does it answer? Nick.
Why is steak better than salad?
Exactly. Not a particularly difficult question. Thank you, Nick. All right, so now I have a more difficult question for you guys. When you're writing your thesis statements, when do you write them? I know you write them in the introductory paragraph, but when in the process of writing do you actually write the statement? Sam?
In the beginning?
That's right. Anyone else? Megan?
Maybe at the end because you already know what your paragraphs are going to be.
That's right as well. There is no correct answer to this question. All answers are actually correct. A lot of people like Sam like to write them at the beginning when they're writing the intro paragraph. That way they have it outlined, kind of like the roadmap. But some people like Megan like to write it after they've written their two body paragraphs. That way they know what they've answered. So for example, say I have written two body paragraphs. One about it having more protein and one about steak coming from animals. But I don't know what my thesis statement is going to be. I can just look at those two body paragraphs and craft it from there and realize that what I'm really arguing is that salad is better because of these two factors. Now, my last question for you guys is why or what is the most important relationship between the thesis and the rest of the essay? That's okay if you guys don't have an answer. It's a tough question. So the most important thing between the thesis and the rest of the essay is that they agree with each other, is that the body paragraphs support the thesis. Occasionally you'll write an essay and you'll realize when you get to the end that your body paragraphs just don't support your thesis. Don't worry, that's not a big deal. You just need to go back and change the thesis so that it fits with the rest of your paper. Now, does anyone have any questions? All right, well, just to make this a little easier for you guys and help you remember how to create a good thesis statement, I came up with a little chant. I want you guys to repeat after me. All right. The road to a good thesis.
The road to a good thesis
Starts with an argument.
starts with an argument.
You need to make sure it's narrow.
You need to make sure it's narrow.
They need to be able to follow it.
They need to be able to follow it.
You You need to make sure it's clear,
You need to make sure it's clear,
and when you're done with your essay,
and when you're done with your essay,
a good grade will be near.
a good grade will be near.